Welcome all. Glad to have you here today. I am Philip Rolnick, Professor of Theology here at St. Thomas and the Chair of the Science and Theology Network. And it's my task now to introduce Father Spitzer, who is an internationally renowned and admired Catholic leader. He was president of Gonzaga University from 1998 to 2009. And while there, he significantly increased the programs and curricula in faith, ethics, service, and leadership, and led efforts to build 20 new facilities on their campus. The student population under his leadership increased by 75%, and he raised more than $200 million for Gonzaga. No small accomplishments. He's currently the president of the Magis Center, whose mission is to restore, reconstruct, and revitalize belief in God, the transcendent dignity of every human person, the significance of virtue, the higher levels of happiness, love, and freedom, which he'll be speaking about today, and the real presence of Jesus Christ. He has appeared on national television shows like Larry King Live, where he debated Stephen Hawking, the Today Show, where he debated the issue of euthanasia, the History Channel, where he spoke on God and the Universe, a PBS series called Closer to the Truth, and the Hugh Hewitt radio show. He currently appears on EWTN in a show appropriately called Father Spitzer's Universe. Besides hundreds of presentations to colleges and universities, Father Spitzer has been called to various trouble spots around the world, including to speak to Tony Blair's cabinet in London. He has spoken to officials of the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia, both sides of the conflict in Northern Ireland, and government officials in El Salvador and numerous others. In 1989, he received Georgetown University's Edwin T. Bunn Award for Most Outstanding Professor at Georgetown. In 1997, he received Seattle University's award for the same thing, Most Outstanding Professor. 2009, he was awarded Gonzaga University's highest honor, the Desmond Medal. Currently, Father Spitzer has worked on, and has developed a curriculum for Catholic middle schools and high schools. It's called CredibleCatholic.com. You can access it, it's free, CredibleCatholic.com, and this program is in 116 out of 192 dioceses in America, and it's in the entire country of Ireland has adopted it. Father Spitzer developed this program because he became aware that about 42% of Catholic youth will drop out of all future contact with the church and thinking about God and so forth. So 50% of those who drop out, which would be about 21%, drop out because they are under the false impression that Catholic faith and science are incompatible. So Father's website, CredibleCatholic.com, takes that on and has had some real success in doing it. And in his spare time, he has published 10 books, numerous articles on the human person, leadership in business, happiness, and science and Christian faith, a topic about which he's particularly famous, and it will be his topic tonight. He'll speak on science and Christian faith tonight in JRC Auditorium, just across the way. I'm sorry, we're in JRC, thank you. I too am in JRC, okay. So I think I'll just end with this. Father Spitzer is really the kind of leader that the church, educational institutions, including our own, and the larger society needs. So please join me in welcoming Father Robert Spitzer.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Father, one more thing.
Yeah.
As Father speaks, if you will, if you're of a mind to, jot down any questions you have on the file cards that have been distributed, and Frank and Dello will pick them up, after the end, his formal talk, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. All right, on to you, Father.
Thank you so much, Phil, and for your generous introduction, as well as taking care of me the whole time I'm here. Not an easy task for taking care of the blind guy. But I just wanted to begin with the thought of, on a perfectly fine Tuesday afternoon, why would I choose the topic of happiness to talk about with all of you, aside from the fact that people would like to be happy and people would like to refrain from being unhappy. Why choose that topic? Why is this so important? Well, it goes back really to Aristotle, who put it this way in Book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics. I'm doing a kind of a summary of Book 1, the first paragraphs. He said, happiness is the one thing you can choose for itself. Everything else is chosen for the sake of happiness. Now, what this little astute philosopher figured out, he wasn't really little, he was actually a big philosopher in many ways, including historically, but what he figured out just by looking around was the universal thing, the universal desire of every human being is to be happy, and every other desire is subordinate to that. But he had a very profound view of happiness, as we'll see in a moment. But he also discovered that everything we think about ourselves depends on our definition of happiness. So he was going to basically dedicate the whole of the Nicomachean Ethics, one of his great works on practical intellect. And he's going to dedicate the whole thing basically to happiness, to defining happiness as best he could, or at least giving the options to his students as best he can to make sure that his students don't waste their life, to make sure that his students don't wind up being profoundly unhappy, to make sure that his students don't underlive their life, or even underestimate their dignity, or underestimate the dignity of the people around them. Aristotle realized the way we define happiness, it defines everything. It's the way we wind up defining love, the way we define freedom, the way we define, personhood, human suffering, success in life, quality of life. It winds up defining pretty much everything of relevance to us. It influences who we pick as a spouse, who we pick as our friends, what associations we pick as being worthy of our company. Also, it affects the jobs, the careers that we pursue. It just is, it's everywhere. So he thought, I can't give a better course than a course on happiness. I can't give a more important course for human freedom, for human purpose in life, for human identity, to make sure my students don't waste their life, to make sure they're actually as happy as they can be, fulfilled as they can be, to the highest possible extent, than to talk about happiness. So I thought I'd share the same insights with you today, except I don't have a whole course as Aristotle did. I've got one talk to give you. So I'm going to reduce everything as best I can to 4 levels of happiness in a hurry, and talk about a cultural problem which you'll easily identify, both maybe in yourselves or certainly with respect to some of your friends. You'll be able to see what's going on. Now, if happiness means all this, where do I get off talking about 4 levels of happiness? Why talk about levels anyway? Because some kinds of happiness are actually better than other kinds of happiness for having the highest quality life. In other words, Aristotle had the audacity to say, some happinesses are a waste of time and some happinesses are really worthy of our time. But he had a criterion for doing so. Actually, he had 3 criteria. The first was what he called pervasiveness. So notice, as I'm explaining all the levels of happiness, as we're going up the scale of happiness here, notice that we're going to get more pervasive. The effects of what I pursue, that make the effects of what I consider to be happiness and what I'm pursuing as happiness, they're going to affect a lot more people. They're going to affect a lot of thank you. A lot of things beyond myself. Secondly, it's more enduring. So as we go up the scale of happiness, notice also that I get to something that lasts longer. So the happiness gets longer and longer lasting as we go up that scale. And number 3, notice also it gets to higher quality, what we have called depth. So instead of just me using my taste buds or my kinesthetic sense of motion, I can actually use my spiritual sense. I can use my my moral reasoning capacity, my intellect, my learning, my creativity. I can use all of these higher powers of the soul, which when those higher powers of the soul have an effect on people around me, my family, my friends, the culture, etc., it makes a much bigger difference than if I just say, I had a good bowl of linguine. So for all intents and purposes then, the higher we go, the more pervasive, enduring, and deep we get. And that, said Aristotle, makes life worth living. Why live for what's less pervasive? Why live for what's superficial? Why live for what doesn't last very long? Why live for things that just won't really amount to a hill of beans in the life of people? Certainly, from a Christian perspective, won't affect their salvation, won't affect your salvation, certainly won't affect the common good in any significant way, or the culture, or your family in any deep way. Why live for what is superficial, shallow, and stupid, said Aristotle. Why not live for what is intelligent, pervasive, enduring, and deep? So that was why he put it into levels. He meant it. And this was a time before hierarchies were rejected. Let's get to the first level, really simple. This essential material happiness. Bob Spitzer, from the central point of view, Bob Spitzer sees the bowl of linguine, lunges toward the bowl of linguine, wolfs it down, and becomes utterly happy with the expression, yum. And then he wants another bowl of linguine soon thereafter, because it doesn't last very long. It doesn't satisfy him ultimately, because he has no effects on people, on souls beyond himself. It just satisfies his taste buds. But nevertheless, it's intense, it's immediately gratifying, and for sure it's superficial, so you don't have to do much to get a bowl of linguine. That's the advantage, intense, immediate gratification, and superficial. The problem is not pervasive, enduring, and deep. Not really worth, investing my whole life in getting bowls of linguine. But it could even be a material thing. It could be a brand new Mercedes 500 E-Class with leather upholstery that you can smell as you get into the car and feel the German engineering going around the turns. And you say to yourself, wow, I'm happy. Because not only is the German engineering satisfying, but I own it, and everybody knows. And I like that. It makes me happy. Enough said. Nothing much more to level 1 than material goods, sensual pleasure. That's it. Not very pervasive, enduring, and deep, but intense, immediately gratifying, superficial. Let's go to level 2. And ladies and gentlemen, you will know that this is 71% of your friends. Now, maybe you're in a rarefied group of people that have friends who are a little less superficial in this, but in our culture, 71% of millennials and Gen Zs are level 2 dominant. That means they have basically made ego comparative identity the meaning and purpose of their life. So ego comparative identity is level 2. What does it mean? It means I get an ego high when I have a comparative advantage over somebody. I get an ego high when somebody respects me or likes me for having a comparative advantage over other people, that I can belong to a group of winners. So the questions that normally besiege the person in level 2 are, who's achieving more and who's achieving less? And who's got more power and less power? Who's got more status and less status? Who's more popular? Who's less popular? Who's more intelligent? Who's less intelligent? Who's more athletic, less athletic? Who's destined for promotion and success? Who's less destined for promotion and success? Who's a proverbial winner and a proverbial loser? The point is pretty clear. We look at the loser, as it were, with disdain if we have level 2 at the core of our identity. We look at the winner as having a successful and good life if level 2 is at the core of our identity. But it doesn't have to be. As we'll see, there are real problems in this culture with level 2 identity. I'll get into it in a moment. For the time being, though, 71% of our culture is right here. This is their view of success, their view of quality of life. This becomes their meaning and purpose in life, and it will become their identity. If they live through this for about 20 years, it'll become who they are. Level 3, this is contributive happiness. Notice that level 2 happiness shifts the locus of control to me. I am at the center of attention. I'm the one who gets the ego hit from my getting an ego comparative advantage. Enough said. Level 3 is the opposite. It goes the opposite direction. It wants to make a positive difference to somebody or something beyond myself. It's really seeking meaning in life by making a positive difference. It gets down to this. When we get around 20 years old, and certainly, hopefully, by the time we get to 70 or 80 years old, we start to get the sense that we want our life to matter in this world. It's not enough to belong to the Mensa Society and have an evaluated IQ at 190. That's not enough. It's not enough to be the best athlete on the field, to be the most beautiful person, most popular person at school, to have the best Facebook profile, or should I say Instagram profile. It's not enough. It's mere vapors. It's mere status. It's nothing. What really matters is, did I do anything with the gifts and talents and time that I had? The energy, the compassion, the love that I had. Did I do anything for anybody? And we start getting that sense around the age of 20, 25, I want my life to matter. I want my life to have some significance. I want my family to be better off for my having lived. I want my friends to be better off for my having lived. Did you ever see that movie, It's a Wonderful Life? They always play it at Christmas time, right? Jimmy Stewart. And, of course, he gets the advantage of being able to see what the world, or this little town of Bedford Falls, would have been like without him. And, of course, it's a shipwreck. No, it's a train wreck, really. And he gets to see all this from inside out. Now, we're not going to get that advantage. But deep down inside of us, we do want the Bedford Falls, a sort of complex to be our destiny. We want to make a difference, not just to our family and friends. We want to make a difference to our community. We want to make a difference to this school, to the culture of this school. We want to make a difference to, our church and to the kingdom of God. We want to make a difference even to, community groups and certainly the culture and certainly society if we're so lucky. Now, of course, you're young people. Most of you are young people, and you know that, well, I don't know whether I'll have a cultural significance or a societal one. You ought to aim at it because it'll make your life significant. Doesn't mean you have to have one to have a significant life, but aim at it. Do as much as you can to make the most positive difference that you can to family, to friends, to church, to the kingdom of God, to community, to workplace, to organization, to society, and to culture if you're so lucky. But if you do that, I promise you dividends. I promise you the best life you'll ever have, any day of the week. But you may not recognize that now. But if you start living for that right now, boy, it's not just that people are going to sing dirges at your funeral. People are actually going to love you while you're alive. But more importantly, you will have loved them and made them better, and made the possibility of their salvation better, and made their families better for your having lived. And that makes all the difference. It doesn't matter if you get a 180 IQ or a 190 or a 210 IQ evaluated by Mensa. I always think they exaggerate these IQ scores. But anyway, the long and the short of it is, it doesn't matter. If you don't use your 210 IQ to do some good for somebody somewhere, if you just get back in your laurels and go, I'm the 210 guy, that's hardly a reason for living. So, enough said. But there it is. It's an option. 71% level 2. They're not discovering yet level 3. They don't even have a self-manifestation. But hang on with me for just one moment. Because, as I said, you have a soul. You're not just embodiment. You actually have higher powers of the soul. And one of the features of your soul, by the way, not identified by a Christian, but the old pagan Plato, who 400 years before Christianity noticed that he had a desire for perfect truth, perfect goodness, and perfect being, and for perfect beauty. And he noticed, perfect truth, goodness, beauty, and being. He noticed, I got this desire for these things. Today, Christians add an extra one: perfect truth, perfect love, perfect goodness, perfect beauty, and I call it perfect home. We want to be perfectly at home with ourselves, with everybody else, which obviously is heaven if you're a Christian. But nevertheless, we got that desire within us. And what Plato noticed is that you need a soul in order to have those desires. And here's why he thought that. You see, what Plato thought is, first of all, you have a desire for perfect truth. Before you got jaded, you were really like my little nieces. Uncle Bobby, why is this? Oh, because of this. Oh, well, why is that? Yeah, because of that. Well, why is that? And finally, you got to go time out because you're in the deepest modes of quantum theory. They're like little exocet missiles. They want to know everything. They want to know everything about everything. We all want to know everything about everything before we get jaded, which is why we notice the imperfections in all the knowledge we have, and we ask another question. The minute you ask that secondary question, you've already noticed the imperfection in the knowledge you have, and you're already beyond it, and you're moving to the next spot. It's as if, said Plato, we have a knowledge of what perfect truth ought to be like. And we know we're not there yet. And because we know we're not there yet, we ask another question. And all Plato said was, I wonder how we do that. I wonder how we know that we haven't arrived at perfect. We must have had some sort of knowledge of what perfect truth would have been like. I wonder where we got it from. And Plato said, well, you can't get it from your algorithmically finite brain. You're not going to get it by looking at the empirical world out there. The empirical world is, by the way, completely spatio-temporally conditioned. The finite world out there is dominated by algorithms and magnitudes of powers. So it can't be power itself and being itself. It can't be reality itself. It can't be the complete set of correct answers, the complete set of questions. Where would you get an idea of the complete set of correct, what it would be like, the complete set of correct answers, the complete set of questions would be like? Where would you get an idea like that, said Plato? From the complete set of correct answers to the complete set of questions itself, which later is identified as God. You'd get it from God. And by the way, you are ultimatizers. you have a desire for perfect love, too. And I told the story yesterday about my student in Georgetown who, came to me very brashly, a physics student. He says, I'm too realistic. I do not have a desire for perfect love. I said, oh, so you never had a girlfriend then that just didn't live up to expectations? I mean, she wasn't perfect understanding of you, perfect responsiveness to you, perfect meaning in life for you, perfect home for you. And then she just manifested finitude all over the place. She didn't have all the answers to all the questions that she needed. And furthermore, she did finite things like get stressed and got tired, and she couldn't deal with you sometimes. And you got sick and tired of her, and you just said, I give up. She's not the one. And this guy literally, truthfully answered me, yeah, I did that last month. I dumped her. I said, well, what were you looking for? Perfect love? I'd say so. I would say so. And if you're looking for perfect love, you're looking for it in all the wrong places. This poor little finite gal, you've just made her, the criterion I would like you to kind of, demonstrate for me on a daily basis is divine. Please be God for me, and you'll be a good partner. Okay, obviously, we are looking for perfect love. Of course we are. And we're looking, actually, to love perfectly ourselves if we really have a sense of reciprocity and decency in our lives. The same thing with perfect fairness. I mean, every kid, right? They want their parents to be perfectly fair. And you remember that time when you were about 10 years old and you discovered when your parents did something that was just a little bit unfair. And you just figured out for the first time, hey, that's not fair. And your outrage was just exacerbated by the lower lip extended as you just took the entire world in and just felt it collapse around you. We all do this. We want the world. I asked my dad once, Dad, that's not fair. He said, the world's not perfectly fair. That's how he answered me. Well, the world isn't perfectly fair, but we still want perfect fairness. That's what we desire. That's why we strive to be more and more fair in ourselves, and we expect people to be more and more fair towards us. We strive for it. But we're not there yet. God's there yet, that's for sure. And Plato keeps asking the same question. Where did I get the ability to identify imperfections in love continuously? Where did I get the ability to identify imperfections in fairness, imperfections in beauty, endlessly? Where did I get it? I have to have some sense of what perfect truth, perfect love, perfect fairness, and perfect beauty would be like. And if I have that, then I must have gotten it from a cause that was commensurate with that effect, namely a transphysical cause, which is perfect truth itself, perfect beauty itself, perfect fairness itself, perfect love itself. That is to say, God. God is present to my consciousness. That's the point. We're ultimatizers because we have a soul, and God is present to it. He's in us now, making us dissatisfied with every imperfect manifestation of love, just by the very horizon of his perfectly loving presence, making us dissatisfied with every manifestation of imperfect fairness, because he's there now as the horizon of perfect fairness, etc. That's a profound thing. We are together unified in having that sense of ultimate destiny and reality. Augustine put it this way, St. Augustine put it this way, for thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. We'll be satisfied with nothing less than God. We'll be satisfied with nothing less than perfect truth, love, goodness, beauty, and home. We'll be satisfied with nothing less than an interpersonal relationship with the God who is present to us in that perfect fairness and love and goodness. We'll be satisfied, never be satisfied, until we're in communion with him. That's what St. Augustine discovered in the Confessions. That's the beauty of that work. He had all the other levels of happiness in spades. He had all the material stuff, right? He was like the Jesuits, charge highest price for education you could possibly charge, and he was really getting rich off it. But that didn't make him happy. He had ego-comparative happiness. I mean, gosh, he could wipe the floor in any debate. He could write faster and better than anybody. He could just take on all the great masters of his day. And it was kind of almost boring after a while, beating yet another opponent. He was that good. And truly, anybody who can write 25 encyclopedic volumes before he's 45 is really something else. I mean, just kidding. No, I'm not kidding. I mean, the guy's amazing. But anyway, the point I'm getting to is he had all that. He even had contributive happiness. He really did. He really wanted his mistress and his illegitimate son to be very, very happy. This before his conversion, obviously. And he wanted them to be happy, and he really looked after them. He really loved them. But it was not enough. He got to the abyss, and finally he discovers what I've been looking for all along is to be in communion with God, to work for God, his kingdom in this life, to be united with him in the next life, and to experience the peace that comes with being on the road with him. That's what I really want. And when he found it, he said, late have I loved thee, O beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late have I loved thee. Now, let's get to the problem of our culture. The so-called comparison game. This is, I've dubbed it the comparison game. You can call it anything you want. But it is a comparison game. Here's my one line, memorize it. If you make level 2 happiness your dominant view of happiness, if that's what really matters to you in your life, if that's your definition of success and quality of life, here's what you can fully expect. First of all, you can expect to start asking neurotically the question, who's achieving more? Who's achieving less? Who's got more power? Who's got less power? Who's got more status? Who's got less status? Who's got more popularity? Who's got less popularity? Who's winning? Who's losing? Who's got more intelligence? Who's got less intelligence? Who's more athletic? Less athletic? More beautiful? Less beautiful? Who went to the better party? Who went to the lesser party? I just got to know because I just got to be a winner because I'm going to go neurotically insane if I get another criticism about my inferiority today. I can't take it. My skin is so thin. Now, this is what you're living through. You might check your identity principle. Might be level 2 dominant, just saying. But here are the other, little clues that level 2. It's not just neurotically asking those questions. It's when you're in the losing position, what do you find? You find inferiority, followed by depression, followed by feeling like you're negatively judged at every turn. And, of course, negative judgment for a person for whom level 2 is the only thing that makes life worth living is just devastating. I mean, that's what's causing the depression. That's what's causing this deep-seated inferiority. It's just a terrible life, really, in a way. It induces a kind of self-pity, and worse than that, it induces jealousy. And jealousy is a really destructive impulse because you think, since the only thing that matters in life is material and sensual pleasure along with ego-comparative advantage, if I don't have enough of those and you have more than I have, then I'm going to take it from you. And if I can't take it from you, I'm going to make your life miserable in every way I can. You seeing the development of a criminal in our age? It's the beginning of the criminal mentality. People literally thinking, I'm going to take what you've got, or else I'm going to make your life miserable because you got a better hand than me. Because the only thing that matters is sensual pleasure, material possession, and ego-comparative advantage. It's an unfortunate thing. So don't be a loser, you guys. If level 2 is your dominant, don't lose. Bad stakes. How about winning? Because you think to yourself, well, maybe if I win, I'll be okay. Not really. Here's what happens when you win. Number one, never get to a plateau. You're on the ascendancy, everything's great, you're top of the game, and then you hit a plateau, and there's nowhere else to go. Your talents suddenly limit you to another advance. You have people above you, and you can never catch them, and it's just too bad. For all intents and purposes, the winner feels depression. then the next thing that happens is, winners live for adulation. And so when they're getting adulation from others, they're really happy. But people get sick and tired of giving adulation to people all the time. They really do, and they basically say it at some point when they get a sense of self-respect. Spitzer, I'm giving you enough adulation. You're on your own now. All of a sudden you think, hey, wait a minute. You, the inferior. I, the superior. Hey, you're supposed to be worshiping the ground I walk on. What's the matter with you? And of course, since you've decided that I don't need to live to make you happy by my adulation, I resent you horribly for it. How could you possibly live without me and live without giving me the praise that is due? I'm going to make you pay. I'm what Hegel called the unhappy consciousness. And ressentiment can be very cruel indeed. The subtle put-downs, no, the explicit put-downs is bad news. It's terrible, causing pain. And what happens? You chase away the very people you want the adulation from. They see you walking down the corridor and they're poised for flight. Here he comes, I can't take it anymore. And when they are poised for flight, the resentment continues and the desire for vengeance continues. Isn't that a happy life? Oh, ego sensitivities? Trust me, when you're a winner, ego sensitivities and the thin skin are at their highest. Don't ever make a public mistake. When I was a senior in high school, I was a good physics student. I was giving a talk in a physics class, and I pronounced the word spectroscopy as spectroscopy because I'd never heard it pronounced before. I only saw it in writing. So I'm talking about spectroscopy, and this guy comes up to me at the end of the lecture, and he goes, Spitzer, that word spectroscopy, you pronounced it spectroscopy 3 times, and now the entire class thinks you're a consummate idiot. And honestly, I was so devastated. I went back to my room. I replayed that tape 100 times. And I had suicidal feelings for the mispronunciation of a word. Been there, done that. It's not a good life. The thin skin. Oh, and by the way, ego rage and ego blame. You got to blame somebody if you made a mistake. You got to blame somebody if somehow one of your faults gets exposed. You got to keep that facade going. Takes an enormous amount of psychic energy. It's a real, real tough life, even if you're a winner. And above all, you're making everybody else's life miserable too. So you've got the company of misery around you. And drawing's not going to help you much either. You're going to whip back and forth between inferiority, superiority, self-pity, ego raging, ego blaming, ego sensitivity, fear of failure, fear of loss of esteem. Somebody's going to find out you're not really even on the drawing end. Here's some inferiorities that need to be hidden. Get ready, everybody. If level 2 is what really matters, be prepared for a life of abject misery. And you get layered on top of it emptiness besides. Total emptiness, because all the higher powers of your soul go unfulfilled. You literally do not have any sense of making a contribution. You don't have any sense of transcendence, God, eternal life. You don't have any sense of character or empathy. Nobody really likes you or loves you. They just have to sort of respect you or skip it. So the point I'm trying to get to is this is not a happy life. Now, 71% of our culture is into that lifestyle. You can expect that the suicide rate will be high. I'll talk about it in 1 minute. But get ready. Depression and suicide are on the rise. The more Facebook and Instagram become popular, the more the suicide rate and the depression rate continues to increase. I'll just give you the statistics right now. The latest survey, 2019, from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, is that suicides have gone up 51% among millennials and Gen Zs in 15 years. Let me say that again. 51% in 15 years among your generation. That is really tough. 46%, this is the latest Columbia University poll, 46% increase in depression among the same age group, millennials and Gen Zs. 46% in 15 years, same time period. Now, as I'm going to make a case in a moment, part of that is due to the comparison game, Instagram, Facebook, profiles, pressure to succeed, pressure to have the higher image, pressure to be a winner, pressure to be popular. That's part of it, no question. But there's another part of that. But one thing is for sure, we got to get out of the comparison game. So I'm going to give you the one-sentence line to get out of the comparison game and make your life and the lives of the people around you so much better instantly. Start living for level 3 contribution and level 4 faith and transcendence. Start living for higher forms, more pervasive, enduring, and deep forms of identity. I'm telling you now, if you do that, you will be the happiest person in your life. How to get started on making level 3 your highest purpose in life? I'd say go home tonight and write down the following questions. Put it on a list and start reviewing these questions every morning. Just dedicate 5 minutes every morning to looking at these questions with a statement at the end. How can I make an optimal, positive difference to my family? You don't have to answer it. Just start living to answer that question on a daily basis. How can I make an optimal, positive difference to my family today or this week or this month? Next, how can I make an optimal, positive difference to my friends, especially the ones who might have some need of me today, this week, this month? Third, how can I make an optimal, positive difference to my, well, in this case, my institution or my workplace or my organization, like the University of St. Thomas? How can I make an optimal, positive difference, to St. Thomas? How could I do that with the people here, the students? How can I make an optimal, positive difference today, tomorrow, next week, a month? Fourth, how do I make an optimal, positive difference to my church and to the kingdom of God? How can I do that? And that's to the eternal salvation of the people around me. I don't want to let them drift into darkness. I don't want to let them drift into, kind of diabolical stuff. I don't want to let them drift into a lifestyle where they just literally forget about God or even detach from God or alienate themselves from God. I love them too much to do it. I won't let them waste their lives, their selves, their eternity. I want to do something for them. I want to do something, too, for my church, to help that church with its mission to make a difference to the eternal salvation of the people around me. Next question, how do I want to make an optimal, positive difference to my community? Maybe I can join the Little League, be a coach, or maybe I can, join a board, that looks at, ethics in a hospital. Well, you can't do that quite yet, but you'll be able to do it. Maybe I could even join the parish council or the finance council, or maybe I could, join a hospital board or whatever the case may be. Or how could I just do some volunteer work on Thanksgiving, or to help deliver some food to people, or whatever it may be. Next question, if I'm so lucky, how would I make an optimal, positive difference to the culture? Maybe in a political campaign, or to the society if I'm so lucky. I want my life to make an optimal, positive difference. But after you have those questions, like I said, you don't have to answer the questions. Just look at those questions every morning and reorient your life, and then put a statement at the bottom of that list of questions. For this I came. For this I came. I didn't come to have a higher IQ than you. I didn't come to have more athleticism, this will never happen, than you. I did not come, to be a more popular person than you. I came to use whatever gifts and talents I had to answer those questions. For this I came. That's called a self-manifestation, a manifestation statement. And you're asserting out there. You're saying, this is what I'm going to define my life in terms of. Yes, of course I want to be competent in the workplace. Yes, of course I want to be educated and provide for my family. But what I really want to do with all the funds that I might get from that, all the life that I might experience with that, is I want to use it to make an optimal positive difference for my having lived, not to be better than anybody else. Second thing to do, it's how we look at one another. I'm going to start looking for the good news in the other rather than the bad news in the other. This is empathy. This is level 3. The problem, of course, with ego comparative identity, level 2, is that I'm always focused on the bad news. I don't want to see the good news in you because I'm in competition with you. I want to be better than you. I got to delimit what you say, delimit what you do. Don't acknowledge the good. Don't express gratitude. This is what I got to do if I'm constantly in competition with you. But if I'm really thinking of level 3 identity contribution, I do want to see the good news in you. I mean, don't get married until you're good in level 3. And level 4, I would say, in a minute. Don't do it. Because I'm telling you, marriage requires level 3. The question you ought to ask yourself if you're going to get married is this the person I want to serve for the rest of my life? Not, is this the person I want to serve me for the rest of my life? If you've got 2 level 3s who have the proper idea of contribution and self-sacrifice for one another and the family, you're going to have a great marriage. If you got 2 level 2s there, that's going to be like throwing 2 cats in a gunny sack. This is not going to work over the long term. For all intents and purposes, then, I'm telling you, don't do it. You know, as a level 2, it's just going to wind up in bitter, bitter agony. Why do I make this mention? Because every good marriage has to begin not just with contributing, the attitude of serving, self-sacrifice. You have to start that process with looking for the good news in the other. If you don't look for the good news in the other, you're not going to have any empathy for them. If you don't have any empathy for them, you're not going to want to do the good for them because it's just as easy, if not easier, than doing the good for yourself. You're just plain not going to want to serve them. You need empathy. It's the great human power. Or, you know, you get a sympathetic feeling where you look at another person, the benevolent glance, the eyes are the windows to the soul, where you look at another human being and you want to make sure that you're doing the good for this uniquely good and lovable human being who confronts you. Thus, for example, if you're looking for the bad news in the other, which, by the way, is our default drive. Remember, 71% ego comparative identity going on out there, plus irritating, stupid, and unkind things really rivet us to themselves. So if you're focused on the bad news, you know, and Joe's walking down the hall towards you, and you look at him and you go, well, there's that irritating, stupid, weak, and unkind Joe. But even though I can't stand him, I'm going to love him anyway because I'm a good Christian. Because what does not kill me makes me stronger. This is not really very, very good. It's not real love. It's not going to work. It's not going to make a marriage last. No, what you're going to have to do is every day when you get up, not just review the questions for your own self-manifestation, those questions I just gave you. You're going to have to start readjusting your attitude. I got to look for the good news in the other. I'm going to look for the good things this person tries to do. The great good things they aspire to do. I'm going to look at their strengths and their skill sets. I'm going to look at their gratuitous acts of kindness. I'm even going to look at their delightful idiosyncrasies. I'm going to look at this person and ferret out every bit of good news I can get. And I'm going to be grateful for them. Because the minute you get that act of gratitude from the good news, honestly, the minute you see that unique goodness and lovability in that other human being, I'm telling you, empathy occurs. And if empathy occurs, so does love. What's love? When you can actually do the good for the other, because it's just as easy, if not easier, than doing the good for yourself. You lose the distinction, indeed the enmity between yourself and others. So those are the two things that get you into level 3 and get you out of the emotions of the comparison game. And you try these two disciplines every morning. I'm telling you, the anxieties of the comparison game will soon lower. But ladies and gentlemen, it's not enough. As I said before, you're ultimatizers. You have a soul. It's not enough. You actually do need God, as St. Augustine said. You actually do need to be in a relationship with God, and you need in some way to be serving God in His kingdom, in the people around you, in order to actually be happy in the ultimate sense of the word, to be happy in life. Now you say, well, Spitzer, that all presumes that God exists. If you got a problem with God's existence, if you need a whole lot of evidence for God from physics, for the soul from near-death experiences, or for Jesus Christ's resurrection from the scientific investigation of the Shroud of Turin, I'm begging you, please come to my talk tonight at 7:30. I'm begging you, because do not let this be a problem. There's more than enough scientific evidence for God, the soul, and Jesus. We'll get to that tonight. Right now, the main thing is to acknowledge your need. Let me give you some statistics just to help you acknowledge this. Now, remember when I talked about the 51% increase in suicides and the 46% increase in depression in 15 years among your generation? Now, let's just take a look for a second at what else is going on besides hyperactive ego comparative advantage over the Instagram and Facebook. What else is going on? A decline in belief in God among your generation, as Dr. Rolnick just mentioned. So the key thing is, yeah, we're experiencing right now a 42% decline. So 42% of kids who are practicing Catholics will, at the age of 13, begin their decision. That's the mean age where they begin their decision to become functional agnostics or atheists. A nun, according to the Pew survey, N-O-N-E, a nun. And so the idea then is at 13 they start, they probably won't leave church, etc., until they get to college, around 18 or 19, out of the parents' household, and then they give the parents the bad news. Sorry, Mom, not a Catholic, not a believer, I'm comfortable with no God, etc., etc. But they're not happy, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at, is this correlatable, by the way? Is this 51% increase in suicides, this 46% increase in depression, is that due also to the decline of religion, the decline of religious practice among young people, as well as the comparison game? Yes, it is. Here's another statistic, and by the way, I can give this to Dr. Rolnick. And the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, sponsored a study by Kanita Dervick and her colleagues about 2004. And this is a very good longitudinal study that was published in the Journal of American Psychiatry, the American Journal of Psychiatry, the APA's, American Psychiatric Association's journal. And what they discovered was this. Basically, they made an even playing field to compare religiously affiliated people with non-religiously affiliated people. And here's what they discovered. By the way, same groups of education. So same number of people with high education, same number of people with mid-education, same number of people with lower education, same number of people with good economic backgrounds, middle, etc., and no clinical depression in the background. So it's a really good study. Here's what they discovered. That non-religiously affiliated people, nuns, had significantly higher rates of depression, significantly higher rates of impulsivity, significantly higher rates, I mean, we're talking significantly higher, doubles, triples, right? Significantly higher rates of antisocial aggressivity. significantly higher rates of substance abuse, significantly higher rates of familial tensions. Remember, the family that prays together stays together. Boy, is that true. Significantly higher rates of familial tensions and significantly higher rates of suicidal ideation and suicides. Kid you not. Now, obviously, if you lose God, you're going to be much more inclined to be depressed, aggressive, impulsive, using substances, having familial tensions, and suicidal. That's the study. It's backed up by 5 subsequent studies since 2004. There's no question that it's a valid statistic. Now, why do I point it out with such adamance? Because Augustine is right. For thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. By restless, he doesn't mean I'm having a fitful night's sleep. What he means is I'm profoundly not happy. I'm profoundly depressed and on the verge of despair. So don't think of restless in our sense. I mean, he means I don't have meaning in life, and I'm just at the edge. I'm right in front of the abyss. And that's where people are in our culture. We desperately need God in our lives. He has made us for himself. Made us for himself. He has been present to us within ourselves. From that's Augustine's whole prayer, right? You know, you were within me, and I was looking for happiness outside of me, and I wasn't finding anything. The whole time, the real you was inside of me, calling me, and I didn't pay any attention to you because I didn't think you could really make me happy. You were kind of this intangible entity who was making all these moral requests of me. And you know what Augustine said about lust, right? Dear Lord, make me chaste, but not now. Now, of course, Augustine had all the passions that you might expect of a brilliant young man who had rejected God. But boy, did he come around, because he figured out in a hurry that he truly needed God. That, I'm just going to tell you, Augustine felt what today's existentialists would call cosmic emptiness, cosmic alienation, and cosmic loneliness. I mean, in the Dervick study, in psychiatric terms, that means impulsivity, aggressivity, depression, right, substance abuse, familial tensions, and suicides. It's the same thing. So what does cosmic emptiness mean? That's my kind of term for the existentialist feelings that Sartre tried to express in Nausea, or Camus tried to express in L'Étranger. And that's the kind of feeling where I'm sitting there shaving in the mirror, and as I'm shaving, I'm looking at myself. I used to look at myself before I went blind. I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and nothing's staring back at me. I'm feeling terribly empty, without substance. I want to go out and eat an omelet just to fill in the emptiness. There's something terribly missing in me, around me. I just don't know what it is, but it's missing, and I feel substanceless. I feel like I could almost float around in just a big nothing. And then I have another feeling. I'm walking down the street. Maybe it's dusk, and I'm beginning to think to myself as I'm walking down the street, everything out there is a big, empty nothing. Everything is cold. It's dark. It's lonely. It's kind of I'm just out of kilter with everything. I look around me, and I just don't see any hope in the darkness and in the deep coldness that's around me. And I can't figure out what's going on. I'm not at home here. Why am I not at home? Why is it that I feel so alienated from myself? And then a third thing, which I call cosmic loneliness. You know, the kind of thing that happens when you're surrounded by your family and your friends, maybe at Thanksgiving or something of that nature. And as you're sitting around the table, it begins to occur to you that you're all alone in the world. That all the people around you may have, their own concerns and agendas and things, and they can't reach into your soul anyway and satisfy you. that somehow you'll never get the relationship you desire with any human being. They just can't do it for you. They can't bring you to that sense of real relatedness, that sense of being in and through another human, another person. They just can't do it for you, and you have that sense of being profoundly alone in the midst of all your friends and family. This happens to people all the time. These are typical scenarios of existentialist literature. What's going on? I'll bet anything they gave up God. Or at least they gave up the practice of religion. I'll bet anything that they gave up prayer, that they gave up going to Mass. Oh, maybe they did it out of laziness. Maybe they did it because they thought God didn't exist. Maybe they did it because their friends pressurized them not to do it. You know, whatever the case may be, they did it. And as they became more and more detached from God, and the distance, from the last Mass they went to the present, is just getting further and further, the cosmic emptiness, alienation, and loneliness just continues to increase. Oh, yes, you can try to assuage it in different ways. Go out and have a great time with your friends. Go out, have a couple of scotches, have 5 or 6. Go out, right, just, basically go to the movies for the 5th time. Go out and, I don't know, take a trip somewhere. Go out and distract yourself. Divertimenti, as the Italians say. Amuse yourselves to death, because it's being toward death. If you don't have God, ladies and gentlemen, you're being toward death. You don't have to be Heidegger to figure this out. The point I'm trying to get to is, if you're being toward death, you are in incipient, if not full-blown despair. Confront it. If you have friends who are suffering from this, and you're looking and they're going, here, this is my good friend, they're a statistic in the Dervick survey. Help them. Help them if they're in the 42%. Get them back to Mass. Just tell them this. If you want to feel better, if you want to do better, then the first thing you need to do is get the evidence you need to believe in God, the soul, and Jesus. That's the first thing you got to do. If that's a problem for you, get the evidence. How do you do that? You go to crediblecatholic.com. You click on a big red button that says the 7 essential modules. Just click on that button. And then you'll notice that there's a high school version, there's a 7th grade, middle school version, and there's a Spanish version, and then right underneath it, there's the videos. Sit down with your friend and play Module 1 video, Module 2 video, Module 4 video, and Module 5 video. Yeah, got to go? Oh, thank you. Okay, so those things, just play those things with them. Don't let them be without the evidence. And then if they say, that's just a video, that's just, these people are just saying this stuff. I want the real study. Aha. All you have to do, same website, crediblecatholic.com, click on the big book. And then if you just go to Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, and Volume 4 of the big book, you will get 700 beautiful pages of equations, if they want equations, scholarly articles from the Review of Physics, if they would like that, peer-reviewed medical journals of near-death experiences with great studies, which I'll discuss tonight. All kinds of, the scientific testing on the Shroud of Turin is over the top. And by the way, that 1988 carbon dating has been completely debunked by Dr. Tristan Casabianca, which I'll discuss tonight. And you can see some evidence for the resurrection on that shroud that'll just simply stun you. But what my point is don't leave your friends in limbo. Get them the evidence that they need. I'm begging you, be an evangelizer to your friends and your family members. Don't leave them in need. The second thing, just tell them, if you see these symptoms in your life, right, depression, impulsivity, aggressivity, etc., substance abuse, familial tensions, you see this going on in your life, and you've had a little slight increase in suicidal ideation, hey, do yourself a favor. go to church. If you've been away from church for a while, beg your friend. Just say, I'm going to go to confession with you. I just want to take you to confession. I've seen this happen at these focus conferences. It's unbelievable. Where you got 10,000 kids in line, college students in line, waiting to go to confession. I've been in that confessional room until 3 in the morning. I'm not kidding you. Because 10,000 kids are trying to go to confession. Beg them to go. Get them into that confessional and start, taking them to Mass, begging them to go to Mass any way you can. I mean, women have remarkable persuasive powers over guys. I've seen this happen. One day when I was president of Gonzaga, I saw, I always do the 10 o'clock Mass, and these guys are coming back from the gym and they're bouncing this basketball by St. Al's Church, and these girls are coming toward the church in the opposite direction, and the guys actually say, hey, what are you girls going to do? And they go, well, we're going to Mass. And I'm not kidding you. These guys with the basketball go, yeah, we're going too. You know what I'm saying? Use your powers of persuasion. Because I'm telling you, why leave them in depression? But you got to be a straight talker. You just got to say, it's a proven formula. This is a direct correlation. You start, if you haven't been to Mass in a long time, go to confession. If you go to confession, then you start going to Mass again, and you start trying to pray. Even if you just pray 1 decade of a rosary. Even if you just get the Notre Dame prayer book. I beg you, just get the Notre Dame prayer book. Pick out your 10 favorite prayers and say that for 10 minutes on a weekly basis, just on a daily basis. Just do that. If you do that, the depression rate's going to go down. The cosmic emptiness, cosmic loneliness, cosmic alienation is going to go down. You start going to Mass, it's the impulsivity, aggressivity, substance abuse, familiar tensions, and suicidal ideation is going to go down. So the point I'm trying to get to is don't leave your friends in limbo. You can't be an ultimate past, but you can just say, you ought to look at this evidence. I just want you to look at it. I don't want you to do something where you consider yourself to be completely inauthentic to the truth. Look at the evidence, make a judgment. But if you really think that God exists, I'm begging you, come back to Mass with me or go to, just let's say some prayers out of the Notre Dame prayer book together. Let's just do that. Whatever it is, something simple. But get them back on track. They will thank you for the rest of their lives. And this has been my experience. I have had people come back to me and thank me 1,000 times over because I just straight talked them when they were younger and they were really falling out of faith. And it was really killing them. And it was killing the people around them. And they did. If they came back, they thanked me. And they'll thank you. But anyway, I've said my spiel. For thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. And all I would say is, strive for level 4. Try to fit level 3 into level 4. And then you can have as much level 2 and level 1 as you want. Because level 2 and level 1 are not bad. They'll find their proper place. So level 2, right, if it has its proper place, then, you're not going to want to be the high IQ person as an end in itself. You want to use your high IQ to serve others and to serve the kingdom of God. You'll want to use your beauty and athleticism to serve others and to serve the kingdom of God. You'll want to use the popularity, the status, the power that you have, or even if you have none of those things, you use the energy and the time that you have to make a difference to somebody. I'm telling you, that all makes a huge difference. In the end, it makes for a vital, wonderful life. All of Jimmy Stewart. It makes truly for a transcendent life that goes unto life eternal. So anyway, that's my spiel, and I thank you for your kind attention to it. Thank you.
If you have questions, we have 3 or 4 minutes for questions. And
Sorry,
we have
I got carried
Frank
away.
and Della will pick up any cards if you've written out a question. Just give it to them. We'll put it to Father.
All right.
The first question is,
Yep.
how do we know 71% of our culture lives based on level 2 happiness?
Actually, we have taken surveys, and this is the Majas Institute. We have taken surveys, and as Phil mentioned ahead of time, we're in about 116 dioceses, so I get the surveys of what people honestly answer. This is before they hear about the 4 levels of happiness. So we just get to ask them, what are your values in life? What do you think makes life worth living? What do you think would define your view of success? We pretty much get overwhelmingly level 2 answers. Now, as I said, in a culture like here at St. Thomas, that could be skewed downward. So it might be less than 71% here, or less than 71%, in a school that obviously embraces some forms of level 3 and 4 as real goals. But I hate to say it, the who's achieving more, who's achieving less is right up there. There's also a CDC survey that's done. It doesn't correlate perfectly with what I called level 2, but it does correlate very well with the anxieties that are particular to Instagram and to Facebook profiling, and it's pretty close to about 71%. It's a different standard, but our own polling, and then we look at the Instagram, the anxiety level for Instagram and Facebook, because that's pretty much level 2 anxieties that are coming. So we think it's around that number. But thank you.
All right, one final question, and then if you have any others, you can ask Father privately right after. This question is, if you achieve level 4, can you regress and lose it?
Yes, you can.
If so, how to get it back, other than the obvious prayer and Mass? But anyway, back to you, Father.
Yeah. No, I think you can lose it, and people do lose it because they get tempted by level 2. And there's 2 ways that level 2 just creeps back in, even when you're at level 4. The first is what I call the level 3 comparison game and the level 4 comparison game. So you get up to level 3, and if I might use the devil here, the devil comes and just says, Spitzer, you realize that you're doing so much good, more good than everybody else. And then you begin to live for that very thing, So your whole life's motto has now become, instead of do the good for others, it's I'm doing more good than you are. And then I'm holier than you are. That's the level 4 comparison game, right? Church lady. So the point I'm trying to get to is this happens, and that's one of the things that happens. Another thing that happens is that somebody sucks somebody into a really bad mode of life. And I've seen this happen where somebody, for example, I've seen a person, who basically was a believer, but always told me, I don't care about the evidence. I don't need, God is faith and the evidence of the heart. And I always used to tell this guy, I used to say, we're Catholics. We don't have to take an infinite leap of faith over an infinitely wide chasm through sheer infinite acts of passion. We're not Kierkegaardians out here. We're Catholics. We build a very reasonable empirical bridge all the way to 2 feet before the other side of the cliff, and then we have a gentle jump. That's what we do. Now, he didn't listen. And one day, this guy came along and just pounded on him and kind of talked him into being an atheist. And, I had to basically wrestle with him, because once people jump, it's sometimes pretty hard to get them back up onto the cliff again. So I did have to, it took me a long time to bring this kid back. But he finally did come back over the cliff. I just said, you're never going to get perfect proof. You're never going to, you'll be able to doubt everything I say. But it's not just doubting, it's how do you doubt? There's sort of, you could say, well, that might not be true. Or you can say, I really just don't think that's true. There's, doubting, and then there's doubting. So, of course, all we want to do is, even if we have doubts, that we've got the minimalistic doubt. This could well be true. I mean, if I could get that, if I could get people to say that, and this is John Henry Newman. I'm just a copycat, right? I mean, John Henry Newman, he's a great guy. We just canonized him. St. John Henry Newman now, a great cardinal of the church. He had a thing called an informal inference. And he said, if you can just get probabilistic belief, right? This may well be true. This may well be. So this proof for God may well be true. These medical studies of near-death experiences are probably true. This Borda Lincoln and Guth proof for the beginning of a multiverse or a universe is likely true. It hasn't been disproved since 2003. This proof is probably true. And maybe the shot of Turin's image does require 6 to 8 billion watts of light energy in order to form that precise image. And I'll talk about that tonight. That's maybe true. So you've got a bunch of probably truths, may well be truths, about 15 different things that point to God, Jesus, and the soul. And says Newman, they all center on that transcendent life, and that's a good thing. And he calls that reasonable and responsible belief. And he says, it's the convergence of the antecedently probable data. This convergence of 15 data points on the same transcendent soul conclusion. That can give you reasonable and responsible belief, even though you could doubt each one of those. I would call minimalistically doubt each one, probable, in its antecedent probability. The point I'm making is there's enough evidence to get to reasonable and responsible belief, and that's where you got to take people. Don't take them to, I'm going to prove it to you beyond the shadow of a doubt. Don't say that. Just say, I'm going to give you 15 data points that will converge on God, the soul, and Jesus. And if that's enough for you to have reasonable and responsible belief, then go back to Mass. So the first thing is, though, you have to get them back to belief if they lost it because of maybe atheism. The second thing is, I know, you said, besides just go to Mass and so forth, I think what really has to happen is catechesis. If people really understood the 5 graces of confession, if you understood how this protects you from the devil, if you understand how this heals your soul, if you understood for a second how this catapults you back on the track to heaven, if you really knew what you were looking for in a confession, you'd be going every month. I mean, honestly, I think we need catechesis. I think we need catechesis about the Holy Eucharist. That recent Pew survey, 70% of Americans don't believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. There's so many good reasons to believe this biblically, so many reasons to believe it transcendentally. I could sit here and give you a whole other lecture, which I won't. But the point is, the more we understand the beauty of the Eucharist and the beauty and power of the sacrament of confession and the Holy Eucharist, the healing power that's there, the guidance to eternity and to eternal salvation that's there, the intimacy with God and with Jesus in Holy Communion, that literally cor ad cor loquitur, that transforms our hearts by being close to His heart. The more we understand this, the more meaningfully we will be able to go to Mass. The more meaningfully we'll be able to pray those prayers in that Notre Dame prayer book. The more meaningfully that we'll be able to pray not only a rosary, but the more meaningfully we'll be able to practice our religion and share it with others. And then we're like the guy who's the rich guy, and he gets, he's given the 10 talents, and he goes out and he makes 10 more, and he's given huge responsibilities. It's like faith. If we actually use it, if we practice it, it grows stronger. The conviction grows stronger, and you start doing good for people around you. So I think, the thing of just the Mass or just confession or just prayer, wow, my thought would be, there's no just about it. If we really knew what we were doing in the Mass and in confession, if we really knew the power of these sacraments, if we really knew the intimacy that prayer could bring us to. And by the way, I have a whole thing on Christian mysticism, and I can send it to Dr. Rolnick. What happens as we move through the stages of prayer. I have a whole thing on what did Jesus intend in the Holy Eucharist. If we knew that stuff, you guys, we'd be piling right back into the church. I know that. Anyway, thanks for your kind attention. You've been so good.
Thank you, guys.